Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O's, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O's, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Simmer Down with Shawn Simpson.
We're
Brady Tkachuk with the tip. His 100th goal in his 300th game, and it's a Gordie Howe hat trick to tie it.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Well, there we are, Ottawa, and I'll tell you what, for the first 4 minutes of that intro, if you were on before noon, I was actually dancing around naked. Used the last minute to actually get dressed, get ready to rock and roll. Pretty good tune there, to say the least. Hey, thanks for all the support, and it is great to be back on the airways. Great back in Ottawa, Sens fans, hockey fans, all people around the world. Been 5 months since, of course, I ended up leaving TSN. I think a lot of people have been asking me, Sam, what have you been doing with your downtime? I got to tell you, for the first 2.5 months, I didn't do much. I did a lot of drinking. I did a lot of thinking. And then I said to myself, by the end of September, with help from my girlfriend, time to get real here. Cleaned myself up, got myself ready to rock and roll, did a couple of podcasts. Then my good friend Tony Marinello reached out to me and said, listen, you got to get into Sick Podcast. It's a great company. Of course, he started one out of Montreal, incredibly successful. And I said, yes, that's the fit I'm looking for. I feel good mentally, physically, ready to rock and roll, ready to get back talking some hockey. And I got to say, from a Sens perspective, with being on the sidelines for the first time in 11 years, I've come back as a bit of a fan, not necessarily cheering for the team, but I want the team to do well. And I've been following it closely. I've been missing it. Think about it. Since 1985, I've attended as a player, management person, or media person, a training camp, whether it was Sioux, Oshawa, Baltimore, Washington, working in Washington, Toronto, Dynamo Minsk, Minnesota Wild, and of course the Ottawa Senators. So did I ever miss it? Felt kind of sick. Now, I hate fall to start with, but at least hockey season, football season, we get out and we get talking, so I'm excited about it. Now this project has come together, and the other part of it, when I decided I wanted to do this, I've never hosted, and that was one of my fears. We used to joke on the station. Sometimes Ian and JR used to pretend to be late to kind of scare me, make me a little bit nervous about leading into a show. And then all of a sudden, Hammer would say, nope, they're going to be good. And we'd all of a sudden start the show and we'd have a chuckle. So I was nervous about this, and I didn't want to be alone, didn't want to necessarily have a guest all the time because, I like to talk. I got lots of opinions. Now, I wanted to find myself a co-host. And as you look around, you understand, hey, a lot of people out there passionate about hockey, but I wanted a young person, instead of an old guy like myself, that I could end up bringing in. So I want to introduce you to, and I think you guys will be all familiar with the name. Of course, please welcome my co-pilot and my good friend, know his father a little bit better than him, Mr. Justin Murray.
How are we doing,
Sam? There he is, right? Hey, Justin, welcome to the show.
How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm excellent.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Now, first of all, I think a lot of people know your name, but they'll know the pitcher. And here's one of the things, Justin, then I'll get into Justin Murray, of course, is the nephew of the late, great Brian Murray. And you see that picture right there, Cap Center. I loved it. That's where I remember all my I remember even your dad, Timmy, of course, and your uncle Terry, all part of the Capitals family. So I see Langway, you see Larry Murphy, you see Doug McLean, and I think back to that. Now, of course, Justin comes from hockey royalty from Shawville, but also Justin was a scout for the Ottawa Senators for a number of years. So he got the background. He's chewed the fat. He's talked a ton of hockey in the past. So excited to team up with your brother. How are you doing on this kind of cold Monday?
I'm a little nervous, but it should be good. Once we kind of get going with the hockey talk, I think it'll start to flow better and that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Justin, and I think everything in life, I did TV years ago with the Washington Capitals, and Jeff Rimmer made me even more nervous trying to do it. But I would shake. I would come on between periods and you're trying to do the fake smile. And I think in the world of selfies now, when we do so many selfies, we develop the American smile, kind of the, we're just able to smile anytime. But I remember doing it with Ian, doing it with Dave Gross, JR, a little bit different. I've been into it, but it was exactly that. But the fun part is this is our median. You're bringing the young single stud hockey person. So you're going to attract that crowd. I'm kind of the older, been there, done that, trying to look kind of cool with an AC/DC shirt. I don't know how that looks, but hey, anyways, excited to have you on. Now give a little bit of background for people that necessarily don't know. I mentioned the scouting standpoint, but I guess talk a little bit about your hockey background.
Yeah. So obviously grew up around the game with my dad and Brian mostly. Then Terry obviously was very involved, but I didn't see him as much as he lives in Portland, Maine. But just around the rink all the time. Lots of hockey hours, lots of watching hockey, lots of listening to my dad talk to agents, talk to other GMs or Bob McKenzie.
How much scrapping in the family? Right? Because anybody, and I'll say this, and I broke in with the Washington Capitals, and at that time, Brian was a coach, and I was playing in Baltimore. But the thing I learned from Jack Button and Terry Murray, and even Brian to some extent, but David Poyle, was opinions, strong opinions. And one of the things I missed the most of scouting back in the day, just sat back and pounded 1,000 beers with your dad and just talked hockey. And obviously he got all fired up, but I really missed that. And I knew you'd kind of bring that angle, but how much fun was it to just sit around and have a passionate view?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. 5 years with the Sens. A lot of great people. Nothing better than sitting around after the game talking hockey with the guys in the bar. Guys like Donnie and stuff like that, who you obviously know well. So so this is good. It's I miss a lot of the hockey stories and stuff, which I think you can add to the pod and kind of hearing about the older days as well. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things, Justin, that again, the other night, and we'll touch on Brady Tkachuk, get into that. But I wish people could understand, if you think that in the media, people are tough on the players, come behind for a couple of cold ones after a bad loss and sit with the general manager and coach. And obviously Brian and Timmy love their F-bombs, but you would swear that night, if you're new into the industry, that you should get rid of all your players. And then by the time you show up at the rink the next day, everything's good to go, right? Yeah.
And then if you win, everyone's great. And then if you lose, it's the end of the world. But
Now, who is tougher on the goaltenders, Brian or Terry? Because I remember Brian, or not Brian or Terry, Brian or Tim. I remember Brian Warren Strela, who was the goalie coach for Washington at the time. The back and forth all the time was comical, because I don't think there was ever a good goal in the essence of Brian, which Pete Peters led in a lot of softies. And to Warren, it was never a bad goal. Who was tougher on? I guess of the three, who was tougher on the goaltenders?
I think probably Brian, because I think in the early days he kind of didn't always have maybe the best goalies. So I think that stuck with him. I think Washington had a great team and maybe lacked some goalies there. So him, the goalies or the refs, I don't know who got it more.
Well, and you know what, that's funny, right? And that's how much the game has changed, because when you go back to Brian, and of course that clip behind, I guess he's maybe yelling at Rod, but he might be yelling at the referees. But part of what is missed, and I'm assuming Doug McLean apprenticed under him, because Dougie was one of the best. We don't see it anymore. And you know what, it is a real forgotten factor of, I think part of what's missing in the game is not necessarily yelling, but the interaction that the players and coaches had with the refs was actually good at times, right? Where there was a bit of a relationship, and then post game, I'm sure Brian would slide over and have a pop with one of them, right? And now it's so anonymous, and most of the referees don't even have a personality.
No, it's definitely changed. I remember Brian one time saying that he just gave a blast of shit to the referee just because he needed to get the guys going, and then apologized to the ref right after and said, I just needed to really get them fired up here. So
no, it was a different age, and the personalities. The refs didn't have helmets. They didn't have names on the back of their jersey. So certainly felt different. Okay. Opportunity here. We've introduced ourselves. It is our first show, and certainly, and again, thankful to everyone that signed up on the YouTube page, everyone kind of leading up, all the production, of course, the Boys Back at Sick podcast. It was kind of fun building up, and I kind of felt like it was interesting, Tim, because I was going to Justin.
A lot. That's okay.
I know, but I was kind of nervous going in, and what really happened on that lead in, when I used to hear the anthem when I played, I usually shit the bed. So I thought to myself, how's this going to feel with the build up? But it was a nervous excitement, which was kind of fun to get back. And as I said, talking hockey. So let's dive right into the Ottawa Senators. And I think the hot topic right now is a couple of them. We'll talk about Brady Tkachuk a little bit, but I want to dive into DJ Smith. This is certainly interesting what's happened with the hockey club. And I know it's very quick, and you've worked in the industry, you've been around it. When a team struggles in any sport, people want to fire the coach. I feel like, now I have an opinion, just thoughts on what you've seen out of DJ Smith 4 years in. And for the first 10 games of the Ottawa Senators, what kind of a fit do you think he is for Ottawa right now and going forward? And what would you do if you're the general manager?
I mean, it's tough. Obviously, DJ is one of the good guys in the game, and you never like to see anyone get fired.
No.
And he's done a good job throughout the course, but I think it's hard when you've been around for 5 years, or like 4.5, I guess.
Yeah, four and a bit.
Yeah, you need I think you might need another voice, and that's not always on the coach either. I mean, you could only get rid of. You can't get rid of too many players, so the coach obviously falls on that sword. I think it's time for the team to kind of take a next step, and I think you're not just getting rid of the coach to hire an unexperienced coach as well. You need an experienced coach in here. If this team wants to start winning and making the playoffs, I think that might be the route that they go. In terms of the style of play, I mean, and it's not always the coach, but they're chasing the game a lot. They don't manage the puck. The little details I worry about. And I think with a fresh face and opinion and voice, that could change. That said, too, poor DJ with the injuries on the back end, sometimes not getting saves from the goalies. I mean, it makes it hard, you know. And do I think DJ could get another job in the league after this? Sure. And will he learn about his time here? 100%. And this league is, you get hired to get fired at some point.
For sure, for sure. Yeah.
So I don't want to come in here and guns a-blazing and say he needs to go, but something needs to change right now, and that's the easiest option. And maybe they're going to give him some time and a fresh start with Pierre gone and all that. I think who knows what will happen, but something needs to change here. And
I think just based off of that point, Justin, you can go a bunch of different ways with it. And sadly, one of my first experiences in the National Hockey League was when Terry Murray was let go with the Washington Capitals. This is way back, but I just started as a broadcaster, and I didn't even think this was possible. I didn't really, and of all things, Terry was my coach in the American League, took Brian's job, and you understand from a family perspective, that was a bit on the awkward side. But I remember the change, and if anybody knows Terry Murray as a coach, and Brian was a great coach as well, but you talk about a contrasting style. Nobody was more attention to detail. When Terry was an assistant coach in the NHL, best penalty kill, best power play, unbelievable defensive defenseman, you know, a great American League player. But all of a sudden, Jim Schoenfeld came in, and it wasn't about X and O's in this case, but what I did see was just a changing of a voice. And Shoney came in, and Shoney was much more like Brian Murray. He wasn't necessarily the X and O's guys, but Shoney was a man's man. He was a powerful voice. And as we know, Terry, just a bit of a different personality. But that's when change happened. Now, in the particular case of DJ Smith, why I look at this is simple. And I said this going in. I got an assistant general manager's job when I was 30 years old. I was way too young. I was in over my head. 7 years later, by the time I had learned the job, I was fired. I went on to Toronto. We can get into that in other shows, how it ended up going. But I learned a lot. Do I think DJ Smith's a better coach now than he was then? Absolutely. Couple of things. I don't think the combination, and this is the same when I worked for George McPhee. George was a new general manager. I couldn't support him. He couldn't support me. I should have went with David Poyle. I don't think DJ Smith has had great support. I don't think Pierre Dorion was a very good general manager. I also say back to when this first started, it was absolutely ludicrous that DJ Smith was given carte blanche from opening training camp of player decisions. Bringing in Nikita Zaitsev was most ridiculous thing. And I remember Pierre Maguire at the time saying, listen, coach is coach, scout, scout. And when we started hearing about Nikita Zaitsev being an elite shutdown defenseman, I thought to myself, probably if you're working in the National Hockey League or a media member who also echoed that, you should probably lose your job. The lack of respect to see what this player ended up bringing. But the problem was, Justin, at the time, there's too much responsibility in training camp. Anisimov for White, Artem Zub. I took 5 minutes to watch this fella and realize he's a good defenseman. They waited, 7 games? But I respect that. I understand what you're doing. Now, DJ Smith and part of the process, I think he's done a good job. My opinion is it doesn't take much to coach Brady Tkachuk, Stützle, and Sanderson. Personally, I think you open the door. I'm not saying you don't have to work with them, but they're studs. They're stars. You have players like that where you open it up. Daniel Alfredson, you know, some of the great players that have played here in Ottawa. It is the next layer of trying to improve it. And when you go back to attention to detail, I don't think there's a better example, Justin, than the other night with the LA Kings. When you watch LA roll in and you see the sum of the parts and you go through some of the little things there, and I also have to be careful because I've never coached. I'm not a coach. I really take more of a scouting eye when I watch the National Hockey League. But when you watch that with LA, you're saying to yourself, this is a well-oiled machine. Here's the Ottawa Senators. Here's the Ottawa Senators over DJ Smith's career, 301 games in, 42 too many men on the ice penalties. A simple thing, a simple stat, but a sign of a coach that there isn't the attention to detail. And I also hear how much the players love DJ Smith. I don't mind that. I don't mind. I know my buddy Craig Berube, who I never thought would be an assistant coach or head coach. I know you can have that, but you also, and this speaks to kind of the staff itself, you better have the right people around it. And I don't believe they have that. That's the part where you get into failure. Now, as far as the what's happening with the Ottawa Senators right now, when I hear this talk about you can't make a change now, it is absolutely ridiculous. It is so ridiculous to hear people talk about being more reactive. You've got Steve Staios, and we'll address that as we go along, Justin. But this is the time. The time was realistically in the summertime. If you understand the industry and the business, DJ Smith, 4 years in, that's okay. He took you a long ways, but he didn't create a foundation. And what is a foundation? A foundation is a good hockey team when you run into injuries, that you're able to sustain that you have checks and balances in place. And I know 3 defensemen on the back end is a big thing, Justin, but it isn't that. And the Ottawa Senators now start to struggle. And when I hear comments about, okay, you've got this, well, you should wait until a general manager comes in. Do you know what a president of hockey operations is? He's in charge. He's in charge. This idea that the general manager has to come in, then all of a sudden you end up having to hire a coach. Why? You are the top boss. You've come in, you've been watching this thing for a while. And I think that's one of the issues of Steve Stoss is no experience. But the fact that they're going to continue to run it with DJ Smith until it basically runs off of a cliff, I think is such a mistake. And I hate when you see that in an industry. And when you have fresh and new, this is what should happen versus, as you know, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, Justin, you understand behind the scenes personal relationships, right? It's not easy. It's not easy when you've gone to war with a guy, and it's not easy. Now, Brian was a little bit different because I think Brian knew he was a better coach than anybody ever hired. But at the end of the day, no, but you become friends with everybody,
For
right?
sure,
So it's
100%.
not easy, but that's where the top dogs, that's where a new owner, that's where a president of hockey operations comes in and says, listen, enough is enough, boys. We got to turn this and turn it quickly. And the other part I'll say, there's a lot of good people out there. Just kind of thoughts on that, on whether you'd make the change right now or not.
Well, you want to make sure you have the right guy lined up. You're not just firing him to fire him.
And don't bring in one of the assistant coaches right now. Like we don't need a Mark Crawford for the rest of the year. Capuano, I'm sure is a nice guy. Don't need it. You don't need that right now for the Ottawa Senators.
If you're doing it, it's for a fresh face and voice. And
exactly.
Type of coach changes as well. So I think you need a guy that is a little more attention to detail, a little more structure, and that ingrains into the players, I think, over time. You talk about LA. Terry was a coach in LA, and before they went to the Cup, and he taught them the defensive side of the puck, and that stays with them,
very much.
And that culture.
And Sutter came in as the best contrast after, because he was just the voice, and it was Terry's foundation.
100%. So you build that culture on the defensive side of the puck, and build good habits. And I think that's important for a young team. And that's probably the kind of coach that I'm looking for now. And that coach might not even stick around that long. By the time they're making the playoffs and that, they might take that another step to bring back another voice that gets the guys going. And it's tricky. You want to make sure you have the right guy lined up to fire the coach, to not have a good guy come in. Yeah.
And that's the careful part. And this is part of, and I go back to that original time I went through it. I don't think anybody in hockey knew that Jim Schoenfeld was coming in. The one thing behind the scenes, you totally respect the guy that has the job. The last thing you want is interviewing guys coming into town, guys talking about it. And you also go through kind of, as you said, and what is also amazing, and you're a little young for it, Justin, but it's amazing to me when I look back to the Ottawa Senators when they were just a crap show. And sure, they had some of the parts, but they were a bit of the laughing stock of the league. Well, they turn around and bring in Pierre Gauthier, who's a different cat. That's okay. We can talk about that another day as well. But the Jacques Martin factor of coming around, and I look at the Ottawa Senators right now. I look through the pieces, the players, kind of where they're at as a franchise, and don't look any further than that. And I wouldn't rule out Jacques. But you do have a Claude Julien. You do have a Gerard Gallant. You do have people that match up and line up with what I would like to do. And I go back to, and it wasn't all of a sudden that Jock came in and all of a sudden they're winning a Stanley Cup. But he came in, he rearranged the furniture, he brought stability and habits. And it's unfortunate they didn't win a cup, Justin, but he did everything he possibly could to put that in place. And do you see a lot of similarities between Ottawa's team right now? And a little bit, as I said, you'd be a bit young, but in 100%. Looking back to kind of that roster and feel.
No, 100%. I think it's time for that structure. It'd be nice to win some 2-1 games, and I think when your night's not going the best, you can still win those games because you have that defensive side of the puck down, that you can manage the puck. That's a big thing right now. I find the guys don't manage the puck properly, and just playing smarter overall. And I think that comes from the top, and even it's not always necessarily DJ that has to do that. The assistants can really do that as well. And so it's all encompassing there.
Yeah, and again, I don't know Davis Payne at all, and I don't even really know Jack Capuano, but Jack's been in the game forever, and I'm also respectful of that. God, I've been turfed a number of times, including my most recent job as a broadcaster. First thing in my life I was actually kind of good at least I pretended to be. I felt like I was. Anyways, when you go through that is one thing, and a critique I also say from an organizational standpoint. Maybe it was finances under Eugene Melnyk, but we have seen in the National Hockey League, don't let it get further than John Cooper, we've seen people switch out the assistant coaches. Are you surprised at this point? I'm of a preference always that I want a Luke Richardson coach in my defense, a former player that played in the National Hockey League. And you go back to Perry Pern, who was an X and O's guy. Are you surprised that they haven't switched out at least the assistant coaches to give, again, DJ's a likable guy. He's a communicator. He's fun, but there wouldn't be a better contrast to support him, even if he resisted it a little bit.
Well, that's the thing when, DJ can get the guys playing in that. So I think he needs to have assistant coaches around him that are very good X's and O's. I think that he needs to find the right fit. And when you have new voices coming into the team, I think you can learn new things. The players learn new things, and you kind of build on top of each other. Now, you don't want a steady stream of coaches coming in and out, obviously.
No.
But I think if you fresh voices are always good, and you can always DJ would learn from the new assistant coaches. Players would learn from the assistant coaches, and just a different mentality and vibe going through the team.
And just like players, Justin, one of the things for the listeners, we should also not pretend when you go through the list of coaches, and it was back to when you were there. And again, not that they're bad hockey people. I thought, I came back and I thought McLean did a real nice job. I thought that was perfect at the time. Ended up going sideways. Pat Burns used to always joke and talk about, listen, you're going to get 3 years out of me, but you're going to win, which he understood and kind of way it worked, but also the budgetary side of it. As I talk about a guy like Todd McClellan, I was a bit surprised, but LA, I believe, gave him the 5x5, which is kind of the Barry Trotz. So we should also, when we talk about players, not pretend that the guy coming in for $750 Canadian is exactly going to be Barry Trotz or what LA's getting.
Yeah.
And from an Ottawa perspective, and you work there, obviously budgetary issues were a major factor.
Yeah, 100%. And when you're a bad, bottom team too, you're going to hire probably a coach that's a little less experienced naturally. Yeah. And I think the DJ was the guy at the time. It worked. He kind of built a team of working hard, but now it's not just about working hard. It's about working smart, structure, managing the pucks, and giving yourself a chance to win all of the games. It can't be fire wagon hockey anymore. You know.
And I always say you get razzed by Ian and the listeners because I use so many Washington Capital references, but I did learn so much. And one of the favorite sayings that Terry Murray had, and this is one of the great things about coaches, activity versus achievement. And we had a player in Washington back in the day by the name of Mike Eagles. And when you do your coaches rankings, at the end of the day, we had, a little bit later, but we had Yager and we had Oates and Bonder. And you do your coaching rating at the end of the year, and Mike Eagles would come back as your highest rated player. Because he knew he was terrible. But he'd get out there and try as hard as he could. He'd give you 30 seconds. Nobody rode the bike better. Nobody was in better shape, but it was the expectations. And to your point, that is one of the things I think that has really changed in the National Hockey League. We used to have so many sayings that we use, that defense wins championships, hard working will outwork talent. Would you agree, though? We're no longer in that time. Everybody works hard. What you need, first of all, is you need talent. Second, you need to work hard, but you got to work with a purpose, and you got to have a structure to it and work in as 5-man units.
Yeah. I mean, the league's really, really good now. There's 32 teams. You have to be very, very good to make the playoffs. You also have to have things go your way, like injuries and stuff like that. But, structure's always going to win. The team has talent, obviously. The top two lines for sure. Maybe going into the third line. Yes, there is talent there. The back end, there's some talent. So it's just time to kind of ingrain that that defensive side of the puck. And I mean, we can harp on that all day. But it is true. It is true.
Yeah.
So.
And the other part, when one of the telltale signs for me, Justin, when you're going through, is when I watch a hockey game, and there was a 2-on-1 the other day that, in my estimation, Hamonic should have taken the shooter. He came off. Mm-hmm. We've seen a number of times going to the bench this year where I don't mind guys arguing, and they bring it up in the telecast, a little bit of friendly, but there is way too much of, and this is from a goaltending perspective as a goalie when I played, when you don't know what the other people are going to do, it's a difficult way to operate. As a 5-man unit, and this is what always happens. We see this with the Ottawa Senators all the time. The one D-man doesn't trust the other D-man. All of a sudden, a fire starts. He decides, I'm going to go put out that fire. Well, all of a sudden, behind them, there's another fire. You see this where you don't trust each other. I think the National Football League is probably the best example of, and even a little bit the NBA. You got to trust your structure. You got to trust the people you're on with, where I know my job exactly, where you're supporting that. And that's one of the things I see with the Ottawa Senators. How many times are guys shaking their head and these down the slot situations where you almost have to start laughing. And then you're going back and saying, listen, come on, we're 4 years, 10 months in. This should not be happening with this hockey team.
No. And I think that's, the pairs are always changing and stuff like that too, because of the injuries, but you have to have an understanding of what we're trying to do. What is this team going to be? When you think of the Ottawa Senators, what do you think of? You don't really think of a brand on how they play. Their skill at the top. Brady obviously plays hard, but I think, when you think of the Boston Bruins, how many goals have they allowed this year? And I know they're a top team, but that's the top teams. The teams do not score on those teams, and you can say that's goalies but a lot of it's the back end and 5-man unit structure. And that's really what wins.
I agree. And that's the part with the Ottawa Senators. For a while, they were trying to sell that they play hard. They're not a hard team to play against other than Brady Tkachuk. They're not built that way down the middle. And on the back end, a Sanderson is an efficient player, but it's not like from a Chickering to a Chabot to a Zub to anybody else. They're certainly missing that heavy hitter. So I agree with you from an identity standpoint. You then end up having that. So people kind of look, as you said, what are you hanging your hat on? What are you ultimately? And I don't think it's like it used to where you have to be a particular thing. What, as you said, you have to be is efficient. Now, I'll also go to, and one of the things here, I always say makes you nervous. In the old hockey, when there was no salary cap, one of the things you're doing right now is looking to make a simple trade. And it might just be a 4th-line player for a 4th-line player. Remember years ago, we traded for a guy like Estetikinen, and you think to yourself, what's the big deal? But it affected change. You can't do that right now. But the other cautionary part, Jason, when I look at it from the Ottawa Senators perspective, I'm not making any changes right now because what I'm afraid of, and the goaltenders have been the best example, nothing is a better contrast of what's going on right now than when you look at Korpisalo's stats and you look at Talbot's stats. Come on. You look at Korpisalo, 9-1-2 down the stretch with LA last year. They let him go. He comes to Ottawa. Talbot, now I know he was hurt 3 times, but he was terrible. Now you look at it, and he's a top 10 goaltender in the National Hockey League. What more can you say? My summary and my point is don't trade anybody. Don't trade up Drake Batherson, Chabot, anybody until you get a coach in here that creates habits and stability where I don't want Drake Batherson to go somewhere else and figure it out. And a great example, and I think, again, I wasn't a fan, but I say this, you get guys at the right time, you were around it. Is there a better example of Mika Zibanejad where you cut bait on a guy, he ends up going somewhere and figure it out, and whatever you say about Mika Zibanejad has basically become a star in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, I think they're your players. You should really know what these guys are about. We've seen it from them in the past, so I think it's there. And like you said, that fresh voice, I think you're going to see what these guys are made of once that happens and if they should be sticking around or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to another topic here and had all the rage. And this is also interesting because I think, first of all, Brady Tkachuk's American. Secondly, I'm glad he's under contract long-term because what we'd be hearing right now is don't be critical of Brady. Maybe he'll ask for a trade anyway. Maybe he'll want out of town. But we have to be very careful, Justin. We don't want to upset the American players because they'll say, listen, they don't want to be here. What are your thoughts on Brady Tkachuk's comments of basically calling out the fans after Saturday night's game?
I think it's just an emotional interview. And listen, they've had DJ all their life. They're going to stick up for that, and I appreciate that. That said, the fans do pay good money to go watch them, watch the team play. But I mean, DJ's a good guy. So to boo him, I don't know how fair that is, but at the end of the day, the fans are the ones that pay. I mean, it's way worse in soccer or football or whatever, So
I wish people could understand in Europe what the media is like and the fans like, and I use that term sacked. Like, okay, but again, I'll go a little further. Sorry on Brady's comments.
Yeah. So I don't mind them. I don't mind them because I understand where he's coming from. That said, I'm sure he's aware too that the fans, do pay that money and have a voice. And but if you listen to the fans always as well, like, I mean, you're going to be in trouble. You know, if you're a GM or coach looking at Twitter, worrying about what people are thinking, you'll be tweeting right there beside them.
Yeah, I agree. And here's okay. I'll say I'm Brady Tkachuk. First of all, love the guy from the day he stepped in.
Yeah,
I remember when all of a sudden he was drafted. When he was oh my God, when he was drafted.
Yeah.
Oh my God, great pick. And I remember Ian, myself, and Lever Sage were doing the show at the Canadian Tire Center. He comes on the phone. I was just like, wow, I can't even imagine if they didn't draft him, where this franchise might be.
100%.
He's a young Mark Messier. He's been a dream since he rubbed in. You were trying to reestablish the culture, the brand, the pride, everything else. The guy's been absolutely outstanding.
Yeah.
I love his comments the other night because it's exactly that. He's playing also a little bit of the Phil Esposito. He's playing a little bit of the Ted Nolan. This is an opportunity now is to kind of rally us against them. Now, from a fan's perspective, I'm also respectful, but the part that has to be and really understood with what's going on here is that this has been a crap show for the Ottawa Senators fans for a long time under Eugene Melnyk. That voice and that boo is to Andlauer and to Staios up top that we're fed up with DJ Smith. We want a new coach. Enough is enough. They're not booing the players. And that part, and I understand, I like the fact that Brady's protecting them, but let's not kid ourselves as to why this message is being sent, what is being talked about here. And that's where there has to be a bit of a separation. And to the fans of, and this is a bit of the funny part, I love that the Ottawa Senators players, and most players do it and come out and say, listen, you're the best fans ever. You know, behind the scenes that for a long time, this market has been a struggle with the fans. I don't believe the players truly feel that, in a sense of they're not selling out all the time. Even now they're trying to build up the attendance. So there's a bit of a contradiction in what's going on, but I respect where the economy's at. I respect the fans. And if I pay for that ticket to go, I can do whatever I say or whatever I want, as long as I'm not getting naked while I'm doing it. Beyond that, I think you'd agree. Now, it's a little cold as we kind of get that you don't want to be naked necessarily, but I think you'd agree, hey, you want to go there and boo and do whatever you want? That's your call.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think it's just built up frustration for her.
Why not even a smile when I mentioned about being naked?
No, but like,
you know, a younger Justin would be at least tarps off.
Yeah. Right? No, you see those fans there a little cold, but no, I think it's just built up frustration from over time, you know, and now DJ is going to be the one that they bring the frustration out. Listen, you go to a game, they haven't been good the last few games. They had a good start to the year, and the fans were on fire, cheering hard and right into it. So I think it's just built up frustration over time, and I think this city's dying to make the playoffs again. And I think they see some of the players that we have and think that should happen, you know, and so when you have these expectations and they're not going well, you know, fans are going to be even more frustrated.
Well, and I think like anybody else, and PTSD, I don't want to quite say it is from being harmful, but I think when you're looking at what's going on with the Ottawa Senators, outside of a Claude Giroux, and you can say Tarassenko won a Stanley Cup, but even with the veteran players and the young players, Justin, they don't know any different. And I don't care who you are or what walk of life. When all of a sudden you've had bad starts every year, this starts to come along, I think you start to feel it. And at the same time, I think fans are starting to feel kind of the same thing. Oh no, here we go again. And that's a real difficult cycle to break. And as far as, again, I'll go back to DJ Smith and the coach. I'm not a mega fan, but I'm respectful that he's a better coach year 5 than he was when he started. I actually thought that their games this year up in the last couple have been outstanding. Yeah, I thought the starts early on, first 5 games of the year, they were playing real good hockey. And when 100%. I look at kind of the sum of it, 10 games in, I'm not saying they quit on the coach by any means. No, I don't feel that at all. What I don't feel like is we've both talked about, they should have, if they were being more proactive, and maybe if ownership was in place sooner, you would have made a coaching change in the summertime. I hate this idea when guys come in and own a team, or all of a sudden Steve Staios comes in and says, listen, we're going to kind of see how it goes and see how, listen, Andlauer's been following this team. It was over a year ago when it was up for sale. He's a mega hockey fan in a positive way. I talked to one of the other ownership groups and they joked about, listen, I love hockey. This guy loves hockey so much. He actually knows how the different players sharpen their skates and going on. You've been following this for a year. It's not a new story for you. And that'll be the next topic here. Just want to talk about Steve Staios. You got a guy that comes in, and I'm not jealous. I've worked in the National Hockey League. And I think some people say, well, listen, you're not, you wish, no, it's not that. But what I am respectful from my own experience, Justin, is you need experience. And when these guys are carted in this case, Steve Staios is brought in as president of hockey operations, he's actually leaning on Pierre Dorion. Steve Staios worked 1 year in the front office for the Edmonton Oilers and then worked in junior hockey. Might be the brightest mind, might be the next Toe Blake, might be the next whoever and win Stanley Cups. But all of a sudden, when you come in and you're helping everybody out, I got Matt Nickel's phone number. I could have hired Matt Nickel. I can go and buy some signs around the rink and make things better for the players, make everyone happy. But I'm brought in as the president of hockey operations. I'm in charge. What you basically have right now is an apprentice who has lost his most experienced person. And whatever you think of Pierre Dorion, he knew how to operate a team. He had been in the front office for 16 years. Now you're sitting there and you're playing twiddle dinkle or whatever it is. You're looking with you're saying, listen, now we're going to assess. Well, yeah, okay, maybe if you feel that strongly in it, but the issue you're going to run into right here, where it feels like it's headed and a part of its injuries, Justin, all of a sudden the season is going to be written off again, and then you're going to have a big assessment on what you try to do, and it's probably the end of the year. And I think for fans and for myself, hey, come on, man. You guys have been watching this for a long time. You've been around it. You should know. And if they love DJ Smith and that's the hill you're going to die on, so be it. But this idea that you come in and you're going to assess and apprentice and help everybody, that's not going to do anything for the Ottawa Senators.
Well, I think what he did do is bring in Peter Chiarelli to kind of help him, surround him with experience. And I also don't think they thought.
But is Peter in officially?
I think
I don't think he is. I don't think he is.
Okay, I thought he was advising. No.
Well, again, if it's been mentioned behind the scenes, Justin, and we can clarify that.
Maybe we'll have to.
I don't think so, and we can get into some of the general manager. But
so
I agree. But
that's what he's going to have to do then. I think bring in some help, some experience around him. I also don't think that they thought it was going to go down like this. I think they probably thought Pierre was going to finish out the year and stuff like that. So
exactly,
there's not a ton to do right around now, especially a team at the cap. I mean, they're not going to be trading probably at all. So, so it's just to kind of manage day-to-day operations. Ryan Bonus, I think, does a great job on the back end there. Yeah. So I think if this is going to be the way it is, I think maybe get an experienced guy in to kind of advise, and then kind of take it to the off season and see what we do there.
Yeah, but the other part I'll also go to from an ownership perspective, and I guess this is why I'm a little surprised when you look at a guy like Anlauer, and I guess technically gets paid $850 American for the team, another 100 left to the Daughters. The overpayment of the Ottawa Senators and the having to rebuild, and obviously Stuart Leader coming back in is absolutely outstanding. But when I look at the business side, this is the other side. I'd ask myself, as an owner, can you afford? And now Claude Julien, Gerard Gallant, neither of them have jobs right now. I don't think we're talking 5 times 5. I'm going to go probably 2.5, 3. Give them a 3-year deal. I just invested $850 million American, so over $1 billion Canadian on my team. And you're going to go through another season here where, first of all, anything that's been positive with the business, I'm not saying it's going to be reversed, but all of a sudden you're going to start to see crowds go down. You're not going to get the forward progress on that side. How can you afford, after what we've seen in the last 6 years, to basically sit on your ass and all of a sudden not do anything? That's the part that I kind of look at where, okay, do you really feel like DJ Smith is a coach that's going to take you to the promised land? I don't. Do I feel like DJ Smith can get this team into the playoffs? Absolutely not. Do I think he could end up winning a Stanley Cup? No. Forget that part. What I want right now is a coach and get me to a playoff so I can continue to rebuild the business. To me, this is so short-sighted that you're not going out. And why wouldn't you bring in Claude Julien, who's working in Westboro? And I haven't talked to Claude. I don't even really know him. I don't know if he'd take the job. But I would ask myself, on that type of investment, how are you not going out and making the simple change? Like, we're not talking about a situation with John Cooper, who's won 3 Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're talking about a guy that had some success in junior, was an assistant coach with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and right now has not proven that he can take your club to the next level. Why, as an ownership group, would you not be more proactive than reactive?
Yeah, I think, and that's very fair. I just think like a lot has gone on recently, and they're just kind of, they don't.
But welcome to the real world.
Yeah, 100%.
And Lauer, like any of these wealthy guys come from a business background.
Yeah.
Hey, this is the world. And this is one of the things I learned working in the front office with Davis Poyle and John Ferguson, anybody else. Hey, good luck. Leave an hour of your day for what is going to end up being crisis. Do I think all of a sudden what happened with Pinto is wild? Do I think it's sad what happened with Dadonov? Absolutely. That Dadonov was just a major kick in the balls. But as far as adjusting to business and coming in and making changes, like I said, man, that's what made you so successful in your other business, not coming in here and kind of assessing and let's just write off another year and all of a sudden get another higher pick. Do something now that's going to affect change with your hockey club and turn it around. And I guess I'd ask you, Justin, what's the downside? Like, what is the downside to go out and bring in an experienced coach right now?
No, there's no downside, and it probably needs to happen. And we don't know what's going on in the background as well. They're not going to come out in the public and say, "Hey, we're getting rid of our coach," and then so they could be doing something in the background, and we're not privy to that information. So we'll kind of just have to wait to see. But it's definitely something needs to change here in this organization, and the easiest thing is always the coach, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that is a tough. And if you're Steve Staios, as I said, I've been there, your head is spinning. And one of the things I always talked about with people is that it really becomes, and again, I remember in Washington, where we really started to struggle and things weren't going well, or even in Toronto for that matter. It's incredible how the simplest move of putting somebody on waivers or calling somebody up can all of a sudden become this task that is so monumental, and you become into this vacillating spot where it's almost impossible, where that's one of the things I've loved about watching Ottawa. I'm not emotionally connected. Now, I don't dislike them, and I guess part of me deep down, first of all, wants to see them do well, and I'm somewhat of a fan. But Justin, I'm sure you feel the same way. How you look at the Sens now compared to when you to work them, when you're emotionally attached, even trading one of your draft picks, right? It's different, right? When you're all of a sudden on the inside.
Yeah. You're looking from the outside. It's a lot easier to judge, but you also don't know what's going on behind the scenes as well, which is something that I'm going to be mindful of. Just because you would see media in the past, whenever I was working on the team, say some stuff, and it wasn't the full story, 100%. And that's the nature of this, and it's tough. And I don't want to come in here and talk about good people needing to be fired at all, because there's no fun. These people are humans. They have families, they have kids. But that is the league. I've been through it with my dad. I've seen it with Brian, and that's just the nature of the business. Hey, you're a coach in the NHL. That's something you should be proud of. And the fact that you could get another job in the league too. That's an amazing thing. There's 32 of these positions. So be proud of it, learn from it, I think, and always be learning. And then maybe he has a contract here in the future in the NHL.
Yeah, and I guess from a player's perspective, and again, got every day at noon here, we're going to have opportunities. There'll be so much talk, so many different things. In particular, when I judge a coach, and as I said, I'm not going to take away everything when it comes to Tkachuk, Stützle, and Sanderson, but you've been around enough to know, and I'm sure Brian and the pitcher back there would have told you when Scott Stevens came in the league way back, or other players, there's the odd player that comes along that you kind of open the door. Interesting with Scotty, it's a bit of Brady Tkachuk where you're actually trying to tame him down, kind of, reel it back. But overall, you get out and play. But when I look at this, and this is one of the things, a couple of key pieces of this hockey team, the backward progress or no progress with Thomas Chabot, who has really turned into, to me, that would be my poster right there. And the other one would be Drake Batherson. And this is, again, the question you ask behind the scenes. Is it the coach? Is it the player? Did you overestimate? But we'll just talk about Thomas Chabot for start. We're talking about a guy that came out, and you were part of this. You drafted him.
Soft spot for him, obviously.
But we're talking about a guy that was the MVP or the best. Was he MVP of the World Junior?
I think so. One of the only defensemen ever to do that, I think.
That pedigree. Now, what it used to be when we didn't have players coming over from the Soviet Union was basically you play in the junior program. You go back to Fetisov, then your World Championships, then your Olympics. Thomas Chabot, and we watched it. You look head to head with Charlie McAvoy at the point. Now, he's not the same player as Charlie McAvoy, but use him as a case example of what, in your estimation, what the hell has gone wrong with this player, if you feel like there's anything wrong at all.
I mean, it's been tough for Thomas, I think. Obviously came out of junior, had a good couple of years. I think playing on a bad team, tons of minutes is going to change you unless you have a coach that is drilling on those bad habits. So can he turn it around with good coaching? I'd like to think so. But he makes $8 million. He needs to be better. When I look at him as a player in junior, I mean, I loved him. I thought he was your prototypical new age defenseman.
What a great pick.
Like six.
Hey, just go off topic here, because it was interesting. Back to that. What was it like going to watch him and Zaboral at the same time, being a team together? At the same time, Boston decided to take him. Was that even a discussion at the point? And then we'll get on further with Thomas Chabot.
No. Like Zaboral, I mean, Bruins, that's their culture. They like hard players to play against. But when you watch them, I would say, 85% of the time, Chabot was the better player and projected to be the better player. But that odd night, if he caught Zaboral play well, I mean, you would like him, but you're not just looking at one game to draft a player,
for sure,
you know? So Thomas, I mean, was an outstanding junior. He really improved. He was trending in the right direction always. You know, at the start of the year, he was in his draft year, he was, you know, not playing a ton, and then kind of just got better and better. And in junior, he played with a little stick toughness. You know, he wasn't afraid to, you know, get involved more. And I think that's something he just kind of, he's lost his assertiveness in his game, I think. And that, I don't know if you can get that back with, to get rid of those bad habits, but do you
think it's a strength? Do you think it's a strength issue at all?
Yeah,
because as far as a junior player, but as a pro, again, and this is part of getting back to teaching. Without proper technique, he's a light player, right? I mean, he's got his stick on one hand all the time. Playing the offside is an absolute disaster. But I guess I'll also ask, and this is one of the debates, and I kind of laughed at. When he was playing the one speed minute or the high minutes, I said to people, you're going to end up with a one speed player. Exactly. And I don't care who you are. This isn't Zdeno Chara. You know, you're not talking about a physical specimen. Don't expect him. And even back to say a Ray Bork or other guys, don't expect this guy to be a defensive defenseman if you're going to have him play 30 minutes a night.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, not many guys in the league can play that much. So I think you're going to conserve energy without even realizing it. And that's probably where the bad habits really stem from. But when you look at guys on the team, how many have actually become better than where you thought they were going to be? And that to me tells me something, you know.
It's a checklist. As I said, I think on the big three. Now I don't want to take away, and as I say, relationship coach likes them. I remember at the time, and this is a great debate, and it's great to see actually Byfield coming through. But I remember talking about a guy like Stützle, how he should be a centerman, and people are like, I'm not sure, and I don't disagree. You don't have to do it right away. It really happened out of dumb luck, where you know, you end up with Colin White ended up injured. He's into the middle. But you look at his progress, and I agree with you, as you start to go through some of the other players, you ask, even a guy like Zoom, to me, has leveled off a little bit.
100%.
And you wonder, as I said, when it comes to defenders, comes to everybody else, how much is it the simple system, kind of the 5-man units, and getting that trust level where people know exactly what they're doing on the team?
Yeah, 100%. I think it shows that when these players do not improve and take a step each year, I kind of question what they're doing in practice and how much they're emphasizing on an individual skill as well. I know they had a skill session there the other day, but once these guys make the NHL, they're not finished products. I think you continue to improve on all aspects of the game. And
one of the things that drives me crazy is watching guys shoot pucks as one-timers when they're standing still. I saw a clip the other day of Corey Perry giving pucks to Connor Bedard to shoot them at the net. And I thought to myself, first of all, he's never going to get a look like that. And I think we can agree the last thing Connor Bedard needs to work on is shot. And as far as these skills things, I think they're good. I think working on skating, Shelly Kettle is one of the best in the business. You can improve stuff. But I go back to your point. I think people would be shocked, Justin, if you asked how many defensemen, because they're able to dominate at the lower levels, how many defensemen actually know how to play a 2-on-1? How many guys on a team do the two defensemen know what you're going to be doing? And to your point, that is one thing I wonder for the Ottawa Senators. I remember seeing a New Jersey Devils practice one year, and along with Utica, their farm team, and what they had on their skills day, they had their goalie coach working with the goalies. They had Larry Robinson working with the defensemen. They had Bobby Carpenter working with the centermen. And I think it was Jacques Lemaire working with the rest of the forwards. They were teaching skills, but they were teaching positional things. You know what I mean? And I think that absolutely, in today's National Hockey League, I wonder, and I guess I'd ask you from the Sens side, is there a lot of tape work behind the scenes, or is it, as you said, mostly what you see on the ice? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not at practice, so I don't know entirely what goes on, but these things should be habit. You shouldn't even have to think about these things. 2-on-1s, that should be... You should have so many reps that you are not even thinking about it. It should just be natural. And I don't see that right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, I'll also say this, one of the positive with Ottawa, when you joined it, but since, again, I guess back to 2012 covering the team, the other side of and the strength of, first of all, I think the amateur scout was excellent. But when you go back to their development plan, you go back to their summer program with Sean Donovan and Randy Lee previously, and then you go back to Belleville, I'll tell you what, I don't think there's a prospect. Like, I can't say there's one guy when Logan Brown came through other guys. First of all, none of them have gone on to do anything, but I think they've done an incredible job of forcing guys to be back down when they needed to be down. I mean,
Yep.
Curtis Lazar way back was a bit of a debate, but overall, you got to applaud them on that side of it. They are, to me, one of the best in the National Hockey League when it comes to the development side.
100%. I mean, I worked with Dono, and he was our only development guy then, and he did a great job, obviously.
Yeah.
And now they've just continued.
Oh, he's such a great guy too.
Yeah, 100%. And players love him. And then they add Wade Redden, and they could continue to make a focus on that. And then I think Matt Nichols is going to really help that as well. I think the more new ideas you get into the organization, the better. I mean, you can overdo it.
Yeah, for sure.
But the Sens haven't really hired a ton from outside in all aspects of their organization. So I think adding people really makes a difference. And it was a lean organization there in terms of staff wise there for a while. So I think if you can give those guys some help, it will. And the prospect side of things, once they're drafted till they get to the AHL, I think our guys really do improve, and I think that shows.
Yeah, you can even see it, and it used to be tougher with the college players, but overall they don't come to training camp. They come in the summertime. And I look at Clevin and Sanderson and Pinto, and I'm not sure on JBD, but I don't look at it as being any fault. I just kind of wonder where he ends up filling in at the time and see where that goes. So you kind of keep on that process, keep developing, keep remembering that. But I guess that's also one of the things with the Ottawa Senators, unfortunately, based on the salary cap system. My theory and a little bit of it, and I go back to Zaitsev and bringing Chychrun in, felt like Pierre Dorion wanted to clean up the office a little bit, wanted to shine things up and show you, listen, the finished product of the team, which on paper coming into the year was outstanding. But when you also look at the assets, you look at Belleville, all the picks that have given up, and of all things, unfortunately, with old Dirty Daddy, end up losing that first round pick in particular. Boy, oh boy, this is going to be interesting from the management side of there are not a ton of assets coming through the system to help. And at the same time, you've kind of made your bed with this hockey team going forward if you want to be a Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah, I think they've, maybe jumped the gun a little bit with that DeBrincat trade. And it kind of didn't work out how they wanted to. But I see what he was trying to do. I think he was trying to supplement with what they had and add to it.
And a little shock and awe. One thing I'll say, the summer of Pierre, and again, I said at the time, this DeBrincat thing's a wild card. You're paying a guy $9 million. Well, you got no idea what he's going to do, what's going to happen. You didn't get any forward progress. He didn't play. And we'll just continue down that path. And now Steve Yzerman, and I know back in the day you end up with the Bishop trade, but to imagine having traded, and I don't care about divisional trades, but you better know what you're doing. You sent a top flight player into DeBrincat, and you've got a first round pick that right now, and it'll change, but you probably get the Boston pick, which is going to be, the bottom 4, bottom 6 in the National Hockey League. What in God's name? And I didn't know him very well. Then Kubalik came over to Chicago, put up numbers, didn't even get a qualifying offer from Chicago, gets a 2-year deal, going to be unrestricted. What in God's name have you seen out of him so far? Because I was also one of the people, and you always got to be transparent. I remember when they were talking about who you're going to move when it comes to Pinto making room. I'm like, listen, move Joseph, move Branson. You can't touch this Kubalik. My God, this guy's going to be good. He looks good. Goddamn guy doesn't do anything when he hits the ice.
No, 100%. I mean, obviously he has a really good shot. So,
but the shot never gets off.
100%. Right? And he scored goals, I think, whenever he was playing with top line guys when maybe the team's not as.
That's the problem when you watch the highlights. It was like when Bobby Ryan came over, and you'll only watch the 40 goals he scored. You don't watch the rest of the game. But that part right there, when you talk about kind of a link and what you needed to happen, that is because I'll also say, and I was way too on the gun because I got some negative reports. I thought Tarassenko was actually dog shit in training camp, but I thought to myself, what's going to happen here? But there's a sign of, and credit to Ridley Greig, I guess just thoughts on Tarassenko and the way that he's played so far.
Yeah, I think veteran guy, he knows what he has to do, right? He's on a 1-year contract. He's going to want to play well. And I think he's been much better kind of since training camp. So, and I think he brings a different, he's won before. I think he brings a different dynamic to the organization on the ice, but also off the ice as well. So I think I'm fine with him with how much he makes. And I think he must be questioning, he played on that St. Louis team with puck possession, big cycle, all that. And we don't really have that here, So I think with more zone time in that, he would be even better. So
Yeah,
I'm good with him.
Yeah, for the people behind the scenes, they sent me a chatter. We're going to stop at 1, which we're not going to stop at 1. Debut show, still got lots to say, but I'm pushing on a button and I'm actually exiting out of the chat, so I'm back. Here's the part on Tarassenko, which again I think you learn, and this is another part. When Ottawa makes trades, Justin, we don't work for the team. I'm not a pro scout. The year that Murray came over in Dirty Daddy, I kind of thought, wow, from what I've seen out of Daddy in Florida, pretty good player. Murray's not bad. He's won a couple of cups. They come in. Murray's a complete head case. There's nothing he can do. He doesn't want to be here. Terrible work ethic. Hurt. Can't catch the puck to save his life. And Dadonov, I think via the metric, had gone from 90 kilos to about 200 kilos by the time he got into Canada. So I don't know if that was mass exercise of him coming in. He was terrible. On Tarassenko, what I have seen and what is interesting, a little more pace than I expected. Not very good defensively, actually not good at all. Not strong on the puck. But what I love to watch in a shift that he has, and this is where Joseph and Greig in particular, I think this is a little bit short-sighted of how much you're going to miss Greig, he's able to get open, how he is as a guy that's been a goal scorer, just swoops around the zone, finds the right spot, and then I guess like a lot like DeBrincat, I didn't realize how well this guy passes the puck. Like he not only makes a soft, hard pass, he puts people into situations here that are absolutely outstanding. So kudos to him.
Yeah.
And as I said, I think that's been pretty good. I can't complain at $5 million.
I'm happy with him. Yeah.
Yeah. And to that, as we go through, and we're focusing so much on Thomas Chabot, which again, whatever the fault is, all of a sudden when Hamonic slides up, which he's a third pairing defenseman, JBD to me shouldn't be in the National Hockey League.
Nope.
Zub is an anchor. You're missing it. How much will they miss Ridley Greig? Because I also, when you talk about where they flatten out a little bit, this guy's a get-her-done guy. He's a self-starter.
What a player. What a player.
Yeah, isn't that a dream player? Like when you talk about what's ailing you a little bit, he very quietly comes out and just and how well he had played with Tarassenko, both in supporting him along with Joseph, but those plays that he's made on Tarasenko's goals.
Yeah, no, he's been outstanding. I mean, he's a go-getter. He gets after it, but also very, very smart as well. So I think this, he's going to be a very good player for a long time. And talk about culture. This guy's going to add to your culture for your team.
Isn't he exactly what you want come playoff time?
100%.
You just know that something's going to, he'll be probably hurt from blocking a shot. Yeah. And then something will go in on. He's like a mini Corey Perry. Right?
Yeah, 100%. And he'll just continue to get stronger and better. And I think the sky's the limit for him. And comes from, obviously, he's a scout son. So he's probably heard it all his life on how to play the right way. Yeah. And he has the skill and the ability to match that. So great pick. Awesome for the organization.
And we also have to give credit to the mums on these, because it's also funny. I had my buddy Todd Lushko, who played with the Greig father. And one of the funny things that he brought up, and anybody that watched Mark play, and Mark was a higher pick than the Sanderson dad, and Mark could skate, but he wasn't real a hard player. And it was a different time, Justin, when he played. But they were playing a kind of a parents' game, or had, everybody out there, wives and players. This is St. John, the American Hockey League, and Lush is in the corner. All of a sudden, he gets run from behind, and he looks up, and it's actually the Greig mom. And they used to joke with, when they talked about Ridley, where did you get that tenacity from? It ended up being from the mom side. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I guess you also go back to that draft, and you look at the rebuild. I've been there, and I try to think back, and a couple of years in Washington, we had some high picks and drafted some good players. But how much do you applaud a draft where, and everyone's always saying the same thing, top 5 picks are automatic. Well, I'll tell you what, the Rangers right now would take Byfield, who we got to credit, it's coming on, and Stützle way ahead of Lafreniere. When you talk about Sanderson versus Drysdale, so give credit there. But when you 100%. Look at the pick of Greig and you look at the pick of Pinto, I guess I'll take you into the scouting side of it for yourself. Like, what kind of a dream is that at the end of a first round and early into second round to get guys that are flat out going to be impact players, in particular these two players, playing your top 6 in the National Hockey League? Yeah,
it was a hell of a draft for them. When you look at it, there's going to be 5 guys that play, maybe more.
Incredible.
So I mean, great job on the scouts there. And sometimes those guys just fall to you, and you're like, you might have had them higher than where you're taking them, but you just hope a team ahead of you didn't like them more than the next guy. So great picks.
How much fun? And I'll say one draft I was involved in, and we're sitting there, and we had I think a couple of picks, but we were going to pick one of two players. One was Marty Biron, and the other one was Jay McKee. Now I'm going back in the way. I'll get them a little more current as we move along. They both got taken right before us by Buffalo, and they're like, and I know I don't think there's ever a better expression than your dad when they lost out on Connor McDavid.
Yeah,
you're ending up with Jack Eichel, who's a pretty good, but he couldn't hide obviously his face.
No.
What's it like sitting at the table when that guy is right there, and you can't, with the scouts, you don't want to be cocky. You can't show any emotion. What is it like sitting?
Guys are sweating. It's
and then also
to begin with, and the guys are sweating, and you're just you're praying, and you might not be talking about it, but everyone knows what is going on through everyone's head. So
and you're not taking your suit coat off because the pits are like wall the way down.
Yeah.
But what is it like? I guess when you get to and I guess off the top of your head, can you think back to when you were drafting? Was there a moment like that? Like Thomas Chabot was, what pick was he? 15, 17?
Yeah.
Like,
I forget all the little details, but yeah.
And that's a star-studded draft, but you're still sitting there like, okay, man, like the impact that can make. And then I guess both sides, how you got to change gears and put on the smiley face for the guy that comes down that you didn't really want as bad.
No, it's definitely tough.
It's kind of like a Tinder date.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Yeah, you're not sure what you're gonna get. But so yeah, and like I think and the local scouts that, first round, it's a group effort all the time with scouts. But if you have a guy that's in your area that your team wants to take, you're just praying that he drops.
I know. Yeah. I've always tried to explain that. And Jill Cote, who's gone on to be a great scout with San Jose, and he was not young when he was with Washington, but he'd come in, and at that time you'd have all your cards arranged, and he'd have like 50 guys rated from the Quebec League, and Jack Button would be like, God damn it, Jill, you've only got two areas, but two players, but here's the part of, and I think it's changed. But as you know, like your Russian scout, he wants every Russian player. The American guys think the Americans are the best players. The Czech scout, the Slovak, first of all, they want their players, but at times they want to be relevant. That buys them about 4 or 5 years to babysit the guy, right?
Yeah.
And isn't that kind of comical behind the scenes of how much a guy will push for a guy? I know they believe it, but at times, or like United States, the cycle, like if you're a Slovak scout for years, there's nobody. All of a sudden, this Slavkovsky comes around. You're like, oh my God, we got to figure out a way to get this guy so I continue to be relevant.
No, 100%. You're always going to go back to bat for your guys in your area. I think that's just natural. With Ottawa, we have a lot of crossover guys. So
which is key.
It is. I completely agree. I mean, I watched the Ontario League and the Quebec League, and then a bit of Junior A around here. So I got a feel of two different leagues, so I can kind of understand what actually is playing, like what will play, or I'm not going to have too many guys on my list just because I'm only stuck in one league. But yeah, whenever you're a local guy, and you might know a little more about them too, which can be good and maybe bad at the same time. But I think the more information you know, who they are as a kid makes a big difference. And
and I guess to that, Justin, I think the contrast is the Toronto Maple Leafs. I remember one year the Toronto way back, before I was there, had a pretty small staff, and they ended up drafting quite well.
Yeah.
As you know, there is also a dynamic of Toronto has not shown anything for having 2,000 scouts, 1,000 analytics people. I can't think of a real diamond out of the rough that they found where you can end up with too many voices. And I use that, and not too many. I use that in the Montreal situation with their head scout, who picked a bunch of players with the Rangers, has now picked Slavkovsky, and not trying to pin on anybody, but you look at this where that voice becomes dominant, and all of a sudden it's years later that you realize, everyone's sitting there listening in the room like this guy's a genius. And in the end, it's just because he's a dominant personality.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with Ottawa, they have a good dynamic. They've good mix of guys that have been there a while and experience, and then some younger guys as well. So when I was there, for the most part, everyone had a good voice, and we worked together to kind of narrow it down.
And you also need that, the team, right? Like you don't need a bunch of friction, and you need debate, but you also don't need anybody being an a-hole or anybody.
Exactly.
And I guess I'll say that because I knew the late great Pierre Dorion, and then Pierre Dorion we know very well. I assume it must have been nice if Pierre understood what the life is like of an amateur scout. And it's not exactly riding around in a limousine and eating at 5-star restaurants.
Yeah.
That had to be helped of someone that knew the whole contract. God, his dad, when I first started or was playing, was working for Central Scouting. That must have been a big help in the process.
Yeah, it's obviously when your GM knows what the scouts go through, and not that it's a bad job by any means. It's a great job, but you are running the roads, you're eating a lot of fast food and all that. And you're going to catch guys on, they're playing 3 games in 3 nights and you're going to have a bad night sometimes. So you just try and gather as much information as possible to make the best, in a sense, guess. And Pierre was always good with that. Lots of healthy debate in the scouting rooms, and with the smaller staff, I think it worked well when guys crossed over. I mean, you have to go to a lot of games. Guys are going to 200 plus games all over the continent, all over Europe a couple times a year. So it was good. Now they're going to have to make some good picks here with less draft picks in the future to kind of supplement that depth. So one guy in the late round could make a big difference to adding your depth.
Yeah, I mean, Simple is the swing of last year of Korchinski, and I don't know him well enough. He's playing in Chicago right now. That player being in your system, that player being in your system right now versus the pick for next year. And if it's a late pick, you're talking 5 years later. So you're right. They'll end up having to hit on some guys. So, well, we'll get into other stuff, other topics. And that's certainly, I guess I could talk on. I'm used to 4 hours a day, Justin, but nice to kick off the show. Nice to introduce the audience to the Ottawa. Certainly appreciate the support. Again, we're going to be here every day, Monday to Friday, going to be talking Sens. We'll break out to other parts of the National Hockey League. We'll have more fun. We'll talk about some other things, but for a day, just wanted an introduction to the two of us, and certainly awesome first show, brother. And
thank you very much.
To many great chats down the road.
Awesome. Okay. I appreciate it, Simmer.
Well, enjoy your Monday, and we'll look forward to chatting tomorrow. And everyone, don't forget, little Simmer Down Sick podcast, and have a great day. Let's go.
Cheers. Bye.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Simmer Down with Shawn Simpson on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.